schools to promote and increase STEM and cyber educational opportunities in all county schools.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Smith is the sponsor of this resolution.
Yes,
Mr. Smith.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to give you a little context and history on this resolution, my intent behind this was to start one for the county council to actually make an imprint on this county on where we're going in the future. And obviously, my background is in technology. I've been in the Marines and I've been an intel officer. So really, I've been in a position that has allowed me to see a lot of things from a technological standpoint that I think benefits this county. The reason I sort of wanted to make this statement from the council, just like we did with the Start School Later program, and is basically to say, well, where does the council stand on this type of activity? This activity, when it comes to STEM's program, is something I think in the next 20, 30 years, it's what's going to sort of drive how economies are led. For that matter, and everything that we do in the next 30 to 40 years is going to have some technological aspect to it. And so, in my opinion, why not make Anne Arundel County the sort of beachhead, ground zero, where our students, starting in kindergarten, and I know the superintendent drafted a letter, and he talked about primarily high schools, and he did say that K through 5 have the ability to offer. My thing is, we should require our starting in kindergarten that we have some component of technology embedded in everything we do going forward, so that by the time kids are out of 5th grade, they're already writing C+ programs. By the time they're out of 8th grade, they can build their own app. By the time they graduate high school, they're already developing different websites and technological components that's going to help us. And we create a pipeline of students that can either go to advanced studies, either through the community college or University of Maryland or some other second higher education learning system, or they can be a ready-made workforce into U.S. Cyber Command or NSA or DISA and defend our nation. And these aren't low-paying jobs. Folks with these skills are literally earning $100,000 a year with these types. So we're building a workforce that not only has the technological capability, but it's also a quality job environment. And so, for me, this is just step one of me pushing this sort of thing down the road when it comes to our students. Now, I know the Board of Education is responsible for the policies that dictate the school system, but that doesn't mean that we can't have an opinion on that since we fund the school system. We're required to do it, yes, but I think we're the leaders of the county, and we should have some say in where we go. There's a reason, in my opinion, that the headquarters to Amazon, didn't pick this sort of region or this area for their headquarters site. I think we could be the Silicon Valley, literally, of the East Coast, and we could start right here in Anne Arundel County if we make these investments into our students and create that workforce. You got a bunch of students out here right now, and they're probably much more handier with their smartphones than their parents. And we want them to be able to build the next cell phones of the future. One of them sitting right there will be the director of NSA or the U.S. Cyber Command director, or they're going to own their own company that involves technology and programming and coding with Java and C++, because that is the language of the future, in my opinion. And the next 30 years, whoever controls technology will literally control the world. And I think we should take, it sounds crazy that I'm even talking about, but for me, I think we should take the mantle on that and start sort of pushing this element to our school system and say, look, this is where we're going to draw the line in the sand, and these are the type of kids that we're going to produce out of our school system. And I want us to be known as the cyber or STEM capital of the world. Right here in Anne Arundel County. You want to talk about property values? You want to talk about education system going up? If people think of STEM and they think of programming and they think of Anne Arundel County, what do you think people are going to want to move? It's going to affect your schools are going to go up as far as the education level that's there. And it's not, like I said, I know the school system is touching on this at the high school level. My plan is, or what I would like to see them do, is actually focus at this at a much earlier age when they're in kindergarten, starting to look at magazines that talk about cybersecurity and things like that. So that was the premise behind, sorry for the long-winded introduction, but it's my passion, and I really think this is where the future is going, and we should tackle this now instead of getting behind the power curve. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for
So you're
2
in
months.
favor of this, then?
I am certainly in
Just want
favor of
to be
this.
clear. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Mr. Marzick?
Nothing really to add, Mr. Chairman. I think, the superintendent's letter lays out pretty clearly, I think, the programs that they're doing, and we obviously are very strong supporters of STEM program as well. So.
Thank you. We'll open the public hearing then. Ms. Sarah Peters has signed up. Would you like to come forward, please, ma'am? And anybody else who would like to testify on this matter, please come forward now and take one of these seats up here. Anybody else who testify on this matter, please come forward now. All right. Ms. Peters, good evening.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. Sarah Peters. I'm with the Bellamy Gen Group here in Annapolis, representing my client, the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland, headquartered in Baltimore City, but statewide represents about 370 cybersecurity companies located in Maryland. We are in strong support of Resolution 318. As you guys may know, there is a huge work shortage when it comes to cybersecurity here in Maryland. Maryland has been ranked 5th in the nation for cybersecurity jobs with approximately 33,500 jobs. However, 14,300 about have been vacant. Why? Because there is an extreme shortage of qualified candidates. CAMI believes that this resolution is a good start. I think it should be encouraged that STEM and cyber educational opportunities be in public schools. We think it's a great way to promote innovation at the same time while growing the pipeline of qualified candidates. So with that, we recommend that you pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Councilman. Mr. Ladd.
My name's Dick Ladd. I'm here to support my Marine friend. I won't go into the intelligence thing, but anyway. Hey, look, I want to call your attention to a back page of the Wall Street Journal today where they talk about artificial intelligence. And they were just talking about how far behind our colleges are getting in bringing people along how to work with artificial intelligence. And they say that within 4 to 6 years, pick your number, this is going to turn upside down a lot of the employment opportunities that are in there. And we're going to, how we get people to work when artificial intelligence is out there is going to be a big challenge. So I agree completely with Pete that we need to do something for STEM. And I went and looked up on the school board stuff and looked about STEM, and I came across another article that I thought was very interesting about graduation rates. And this is dealing with the effectiveness in our schools at the other end of the spectrum. And the events in Florida over the last couple of days got me wondering about what are we doing for the kids who don't get into STEM. And I would say that that is equally meritorious of your attention to figure out what we do for the 10% of the kids that fall through the crack. And we need to get some sort of a program like STEM, and we have some of them in the CAT program, but we've got to figure out how we reach those kids. And there are places that we can put money in the Magna program. What's the school right up here by the Special Academy? I've forgotten the name of it. I'm in a senior moment. But we can put money into some of those programs, and we can start pushing the kids into CAT program, and we can start finding things to keep these kids in school. You know, listen very closely to what they're doing to the freshmen to screen out the kids, because they know who the kids that are going to drop out, and we've got to find ways to get them in. And maybe what you're saying, Pete, about getting this stuff started in the kindergarten is part of the answer. But we don't have a buck that we cannot go and invest poorly by keeping these kids in school and getting them a job. We've got plenty of jobs to fill up in our neck of the woods, and we just got to get them there. Thank you. Vote yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The public hearing is now closed. Is there any, Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 318.
Resolution 318, resolution urging members of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education and the Superintendent of Anne Arundel County Public Schools to promote and increase STEM and cyber educational opportunities in all county schools.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, real quick,
Yes.
we all know that over the next couple of years that the Board of Education is transitioning to a elected capacity. And I would encourage who's ever running for the Board of Education to have this in the back of their pocket as far as when it comes to cyber and technology in general when it comes to education, and to focus on that. But at the end of the day, this is our moment to put a line in the sand. This is just the first step because I want to do other things, including adding funding to this at some point when the school board comes up with a policy or a program that allows from K through 12 to literally walk someone through. By the time they graduate high school, they are a professional cyber warrior. I am not kidding. That's what I would love to have coming out of our high schools. That is the smartest thing we can do as legislators, is to push this county from an education standpoint down that path. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else? Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 318.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Grasso.
Aye.
Mr. Fink.
Aye.
Mr. Peruka.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 318 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please read the title of Resolution 418.
Resolution 418, resolution urging the Maryland Department of Transportation and the Maryland Transit Administration to ensure proper security at light rail stations in Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Grasser and Mr. Smith are co-sponsors.
Basically, what we have here, folks, is that up in North County, where Councilman Smith and myself are, we're having a tremendous amount of problems with the light rail, and it was a big big problem when they wanted to put it in there, and it's caused all kinds of issues with the communities up there. And if you get on Facebook and just see what the people are saying, they're about fit to be tied. My solution was to shut down 3 stops, the ones that affect mostly in Councilman Smith's area, but they say I'm a pipe dreamer. So, okay, so we can't close the stops down, then I think what at least we owe the taxpayers is a secure transportation. So if you're going to run this light rail, there should be on-duty police officers by the MTA that should automatically ride the train, check tickets. There should be somebody in the parking lot to make sure that people aren't getting jumped. One of the ladies that was leading the charge, she was just mugged a month ago. And of course, they took everything that she had, and probably not the best person to mug because she was the one leading the charge. So I just feel like when government provides transportation, they should also provide security with their transportation. And in this situation, I think they've done a very poor job. And hopefully the council will support this. And I would ask that we have this sent directly to the governor's home or to wherever he's at, and have it supported through a budget. And let him put some police there, and secure the transportation that we're providing for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Grasser. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, look, how sad is it that we live in an age that we have communities that for the last probably 30 years, this light rail has been in place, hell, probably since I've been born. And they've had issues with it since then. And, when I say we, the government, has responded and sort of measured approaches that were short-term. We've never really done anything long-term to address it. I know the state, with Pam Vital, she has some other effort that's requiring some attendees on the train. But they have been asking this for probably 10 years for us to do something about it. We've had the police department go up there, but again, the county there's only so much that we can do as the county when it comes to police officers, and they obviously can't stand there 24/7. Quite frankly, I wouldn't want them to, because it's a state asset. So the state should actually have the adequate personnel protection to make sure that folks who are using the train or living in the area aren't sort of chastised by or affected negatively by the activity that's occurring from the train. And they have, Linthicum, for example, has seen a number of different activities that have occurred over there due to it. And all we're asking as the county, if we could affect it, we would. But the reality is it's a state asset, and it requires a state action to make some sort of meaningful thing take place. And so I would encourage, obviously us to vote for it, but at the end of the day, we need the state, MDOT, MTA, and the governor, quite frankly, to really say, enough's enough. Here's 2 or 3 personnel that will assign to that station, and they'll just rotate over those 3 stops throughout the day, at least through the high peak hours use of the station. But our citizens shouldn't be affected by a state asset without the state sort of providing some sort of offset to address their concerns. And so that's my 2 cents on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else? Mr. Marzik?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. Ms. Gray is passing on a letter. We welcome the council's efforts on this. We have been involved with this issue for a long time as well, and the letter it's passing out is a letter we had sent to MDOT asking for consolidation of those stations or possibility of different design changes to the stations to help with security. Our police have also stepped up their efforts in the last 18 months in the area due to the concerns and the residents feeling as if the needs are not being met. We don't believe MDOT will close the station, but they have said they'll study changing some of the design of the stations to help with security in those areas. So we welcome that step, and we look forward to working with you all and MDOT to address these issues.
Mr. Marzak.
Mr. Smith.
If you could, and I know that the county executive has been on board with this. Obviously, this letter came out in November, and I remember when it was drafted up.
Yep.
And we sat down with MDOT as well. But if they say they're going to study one more thing, I mean, I'm literally going to just jump every time I hear that word. Well, we're going to study it. Well, that means you're not going to do anything.
Right. I think the request has been made to close this station. I think the reality is there's too much use of the station as well.
I don't even. I'm okay with them keeping it open, but put some personnel there. And every time they use the word study, it reminds me of my mother when we go to the grocery store or the mall, and I'd say, hey, well, can I have that? And she'd say, I think about it. Well, that meant no. And so when I hear this word, well, we'll study it, well, that means no, you're not going to do anything about it. And so I just hope that MDOT or at the state level can really weigh in on this. It really is like a $200,000 solution. Just add one FTE to it, one position. Just add one position, MDOT police officer or MTA police officer, and I think that could probably have phenomenal effects from. I'm not upset at you. This isn't at you. This is directed at the state. I'm just frustrated that we keep hearing the same thing. Well, we're going to study it. Okay.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Walker is about to tell you that he's going to think about it. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, have you weighed in on Ms. Beidel's bill? I know she has the bill, but I haven't. I don't know the particulars. I know it talked about having security of some kind up
It's
there.
actually tomorrow, Friday. Friday,
Okay.
it's up for.
The delegation's voting on the bill on Friday. It's going to be a local bill. They're not police officers they're putting there, they're attendants.
Attendants, yeah.
And it would be a pilot, I think it's going to be a pilot program just for our county to see if we can have an extra set of eyes at those stations.
Mr. Marzak, do you know if the county executive has sent a letter in support of that bill or is in support of that bill? Or?
We didn't weigh in yet. We were waiting here from MTA to hear, because the bill was originally drafted as a statewide bill, so we weren't sure what was happening with it. And then we pointed out that I think she thought it was going to be a local bill, and we pointed out to her that it was not a local bill.
Statewide.
So that's why they're offering the amendments to make it for the county, so we haven't.
Got it, thank you. But if it did actually get changed to be a delegation bill or a county bill, you would be supportive of it?
I think we'd have to see what the details are, as far as what the program is and what the costs are. I have no idea what it costs to start a new program. I also don't know if they're legally allowed to do what they're proposing to do in the bill. So we were going to talk to some.
Require the administration to staff something?
To staff people, yeah.
Got it. That makes sense.
Separation of powers issue.
Yep.
So yes, I'm supportive of that state bill.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've read through the resolution, and I certainly understand the problem that you guys are looking to address. I guess my concern, well, two concerns. Number one, the county executive's written a letter. I think we could pass this resolution. I'm not sure it'll have any effect, but it might give you guys more backing if you went up to testify at a budget hearing or you met with the department or something like that. Which is part of my question is have you considered doing that rather than bringing the resolution before us? And then I'll ask both questions at once so then you can do it. And then my second question is, the part of this that gives me the most trouble is in the first resolved clause where you're saying to consider closing certain neighborhood light rail stations. And my worry is, I guarantee you there's people during non-peak hours that depend on that to get to work. Maybe they're nurses up at one of the hospitals in Baltimore, or they have, strange shift work where they have to get there in the middle of the day. But I mean, the concerns you guys have are real, but are we going to, address them in a way that's going to be punitive towards a vulnerable part of the population, which is of concern?
So to answer the first question is, yes, we've met with MDOT several times, actually, over the last 3 or 4 months, looking at the number of ridership to determine whether or not it would warrant a closing. It probably doesn't if you look at the ridership. We looked at a number of folks who were being fined on the train for not purchasing tickets, and it was significant as far as the folks who were on the train without a ticket, but the people that they only fined was a very small number of that, which became an issue as well during some of the meetings that we had. So we've had a number of different myself, the members of the delegation from District 32, we all sat down with them several times to sort of discuss this and trying to find a way out. But yes, this would be used essentially to add on to that. The council, the county executive believes it, but also the county council believes it as well, just to give it a unified voice on the activity that's going on out there. To your second part of the question, as far as consider the closing, if you look at the 3 stations specifically, one of them is like a park and stop or whatever, like it drops off, which is down the street from one of the other stations. And so some of the communities are like, well, okay, maybe you can close that one and just keep this one open. So the consider closing doesn't necessarily mean all of them being closed, but take it a comprehensive approach to looking at the station. Part of that package could be maybe this stop could be closed and this one left open, but to look at everything and leave all the options on the table. So we certainly don't. If you look at the ridership, obviously there are folks that are using the train, and so I get that. That's why we had amended it initially at first to say, well, maybe modify the hours where you sort of use them during peak hours instead of throughout the night or late into the evening. And so hopefully that addresses your concern about the verbiage of consider closing.
It does somewhat. It just consider closing certain neighborhood light rail stations to protect Maryland citizens sounds, I don't know, it sounds kind of harsh. But I mean, what you said in your narrative, I mean, I get that. I'd also, I mean, we're fortunate in Anne Arundel County, we have Senator Ed DeGrange is on the B&T committees on budget and tax. I suspect someone like that could be very helpful. And if what you're saying is correct, that in order to get additional patrol coverage or hire one more person to check those stations, in the budget climate over there, that's totally doable. So maybe working directly with a representative from that area who's on the budget committee could be more effective than us passing a resolution. But I understand all of the above strategy. So
yeah, it's called combined arms, right, Mr. Ladd? Combined arms.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman Trumbauer, that harsh language in there was due to me.
No, I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt, right? Mr. Grasso.
So
I see your thumbprint is still on the ink.
Yeah, as you already know, in all legislation, you're going to make some people happy and some not. Unfortunately, I'm worried about the people who physically have their assets there, that live there, pay their property taxes, and have to worry about interesting individuals coming through the communities, worried about, the shoplifting events, the stores closing down. In fact, without passing on to a past senator, the people were in an uproar when that light rail was going to come through there. In fact, they made it very clear on how they felt about that light rail. And that senator still went through with it. In the next election, he lost. That was the end of that. And then Middlebrooks was the one that won that election. So my always biggest concern is, there's going to be people that ride the light rail, and it's a benefit to them. But my biggest concern is that I want to protect the people that actually pay the tax dollars, that live there every day, that have to deal with this. And if they tell me that they don't like it and they've had enough of it, and of course, you get on Facebook and you hear everybody chiming up, and Councilman Smith just talked, we met it at one of the schools there. There's people who are in there deep. And they made it real clear on how they felt about things. I told them that we would put this resolution together for what it was worth. We're going to be yelling on deaf ears, because really I feel that the ultimate deal here is going to the governor's office. He is the one that's going to have to financially set this down and say, we are going to fund X amount of police, whatever the case may be. But all I can do, as you, is speak for the people. And the people tell me they don't want this, then it's clear to me, and we send the resolution to the governor, and I pass it on to him, and if the governor chooses not to do anything about it, it's on him, and he'll have to deal with the election results of what the people feel when they vote. And that's it. So my job is done. I spoke very clear on how I feel about things. I can see that. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Grasso. Mr. Marzik? We will now open the public hearing. Seeing no movement, we will close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 418.
Resolution number 418, resolution urging the Maryland Department of Transportation and the Maryland Transit Administration to ensure proper security at light rail stations in Anne Arundel County.
Any more discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 418.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Mr. Trumbauer.
I'll note my previous concern with that particular language, but because it's just a resolution, and I'll give some deference to the sponsors, and I'll vote aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Grasso.
Aye.
Mr. Fink.
Aye.
Mr. Peruka.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution 418 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Appreciate the scouts being here. Is there any other business to be brought before the County Council?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Council is adjourned until March 5th, 2018. I'm not sure. I don't think we've got the...